So what I read here is that we're still early, long way to go before fiat's dominance is really challenged, okay? But here, getting to the good part. In today's newsletter, Fidelity enters the spot Solana ETF race in the US. BlackRock expands its ETP products into Europe. Binance suspends an employee for allegedly profiting from insider information. I don't care about that right now. Mt. Gox potentially, so that could be the big seller too. I thought the Mt. Gox Bitcoin was supposed to have been sold and exhausted last October, but it sounds like Mt. Gox makes another $1 billion Bitcoin transfer and still holding quite a lot of Bitcoin, according to Arkham. So maybe that's our big seller overhead. Fortunately, Michael Saylor is still buying quite a bit of that. And I don't want to get too much into the news, but it's worth noting. So again, Fidelity entering. Want to see when do we think? See, that could be the big catalyst, you guys. If we get a Solana spot ETF, I think there'll be a lot more participation than ETN Ethereum, and weighing that Ethereum, of course, has high gas fees. Solana still has a black mark on its face with all that meme coin nonsense, though. But still, it has a lot of potential on the network, and the Fire Dancer still to come out, which could potentially be a game changer in transactions per second. So let's skim the rest of this. Asset manager Fidelity becomes largest firm to enter the growing list. Runners and riders in the race for the spot Solana ETF approvals, joining rivals Franklin Templeton, Grayscale, Canary, and VanEck. So some big players looking to get into that Solana spot ETF, and that's impactful, you guys, because there's a lot of reminding you there's a lot of big organizations like pensions and sovereign wealth funds and things that can't really yet buy the underlying Bitcoin and crypto. Why? Because it's unregulated and they have a lot of things they have to check off. They have to hire consultants in some cases, the pension funds, and they have to hire consultants and many layers of consultants to say, is this safe? So that if it goes badly, they have someone to point the finger at. I was just watching something about that recently. And that's true. Multiple layers of hired consultants, and the consultants don't want to look bad, so they might say, yeah, it's not so safe. You know, they might just want to cover their own ass. So, but once that happens, and slowly it will and is, those pension funds control a lot of money, and the pension funds are running out of money. They have to do something. They're upside down, a lot of these, and Social Security, etc. It's not going to be there. And that was one of the things the flight attendant said. She's like, you know, all this talk about retirement. She's like, I don't want to be doing this for 10 more years, and I don't blame her. Um, although you know, Delta's a great airline, they take good care of their employees. But at any rate, all of this leading towards this mass adoption, slowly but surely happening. And this is not breaking news to you guys, but I think it's important to keep that in mind as an underwhelming groundswell of what is happening. And of course, Victor Hugo is known for saying, you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. And you can just feel all of this bubbling up. And you know, that rising tide lifts all ships. And it's still a tide, so it'll rise and go down. But just like the global warming, we are having tides rise potentially permanently for around the world. Anyway, that's enough of the analogies. So, asset manager giant Fidelity becomes the largest spot firm to enter the growing list. We talked about that. And volatility shares already launched the first ETF tied to Solana futures contracts last week. Fidelity spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs approved under previous administration. So guys, if the previous administration approved the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF, a Solana ETF should be a drop in the bucket. It's a slam dunk with this pro-SEC, pro-crypto SEC administration. So this is all good. It's worth talking about this. Here, as I said, must be my peripheral vision. Under President Trump, a more crypto-friendly SEC has received a slew of crypto ETF proposals from other firms for everything from XRP to Litecoin, Dogecoin, and even Pengu. No idea what Pengu is. I don't think we need an ETF for that. So BlackRock launches Bitcoin ETF. Don't want to cover all this. Not going to get into the news so much today. But that is one reason that I really like Solana. There's a clear area, a clear zone of buyers in the Wyckoff patterns here. There's accumulation happening here. At some point, they will mark it up and we'll be able to distribute. So even if we only go up here and sell most of it at $250, why is that not working for me here? That's a nice little 100% gainer. beats a sharp stick in the eye. So that's a good segue, by the way. I think here's a conversation that's probably on many of your minds, and that is if we have a lockout trade on Bitcoin and it just goes vertical, we don't want to miss participating in that. And many of you, like me, are allocated into some altcoins, and I'll run through some of those today. The question is, do we start selling altcoins, arguably at a loss here, to buy Bitcoin? And that's a tough one. So I think it's a personal decision and something I'm going to be looking at, potentially selling some of these altcoins to start buying into Bitcoin. But probably the more important move is I'll stay more heavily weighted in Solana and be taking profits up into these zones, which should appreciate at a faster, higher rate, and then be on the next wave down, then be moving it over into Bitcoin. Because we, as Camel Finance was talking about today, if we're coming into wave 3, and I'll look at another version of this, whether we're going into wave 3 or wave 5, we still should see one more pullback. And we're going to have to navigate that as best we can. If you have some powder dry, though, and some of you do, and I see some people here, the private clients, it's not a bad time to be entering into these, especially near these buy zones. And not going all in, just buying pullbacks and DCAing if you have the capital. However, I also understand many of you guys have been holding all the way down. Even though I've been teaching you that strategy, when we break key support levels, sell half, wait for lower prices to get back in, like we were doing back in this range. And hopefully you guys have been listening to that. But I do understand people are busy and don't always have time to do these things. Let's kind of run down the list of our other hot list, and then we'll look at some coins if you guys want to look at any. Again, Filecoin was recommending buying in this $3 range and long-term support. They did do a throw under here to down into a lower buy zone. Again, our buy order block detector for the win came right down in this range and got gobbled up. So with that, I'll just clone this line so that we can cover all of this. Came right down in this range, down in this range. It's never exact, but we have some really clear levels of support on Filecoin. Pardon me. So I like this. I like this here for that risk reward. Also on the weekly, do we have ERIs forming on these? We had an ERI back in there. So TSI is starting to kind of confirm on this. I would suggest in Filecoin, as with anything, taking profits in these red zones. But that's more than 100, it's like 150x down here from $3 up to, say, $8, $9. These are great trading zones, and holding this for that longer term, we've covered this. I've got 40x potential on this run, potentially 250x in the long run. But that's going to take a little bit longer for that market cap to really get up on those ranges. So going through these fairly quickly, Aptos was looking pretty good on this weekly time frame. Aptos still looking strong, coming out of that buy zone. Looking ready to run, you guys. Aptos looking very strong, and I won't be selling any of this. This has potential 10x potential. Too many potentials there. Right, Austin Powers. Allow myself to introduce myself here. So potential 10x from these ranges if you're buying down at $5 up to here. And do I have that right? I'm sorry. No, I wasn't going all the way up to the 3.618. Guys, Aptos still strong. I like this. Look, we're getting that RSI divergence. I would say it's time to buy more Aptos here. Let's look at a daily. A little overbought on the daily, but we know it can stay up in these ranges. Some sell pressure there. We do need to see it kind of clear this range, so a little bit of conflicting information, but we could still push above that. Let's set an alerts. Let the alerts tell you what to do. Crossing up over, let's just say, I'll just say $7 to be sure. And to clear that sell zone, say buy Aptos on the weekly, looks very good. And at that point, we'll be kind of breaking out of that lower downtrending channel. I want to see it above the thick ice. That's that 50-day EMA. But this $7 to me looks like a good point as a confirmation. So on to helium. Many of these getting a little bit short-term overbought. It's not often that they align fully. Really want to be paying attention to the weekly. We see the TSI going up And once it gets above 20, we want to know. We should be doing that on all of these. So this should be crossing up. What am I doing here? This should say crossing up over 20. Again, you guys have seen this upside and down in every way possible. You know what that means. That is our confirmation to get in. And on the daily time frame, showing a little weakness, volume decreasing. So we really just kind of want to be careful. Ideally, we get a TSI, sorry, the RSI and TSI, but look at that signal line about to cross there, trying to get it done. So maybe helium needs a little bit more time. Ondo Finance is bullish on the TSI weekly, sorry, RSI Pro. We need to see that confirm. But as soon as we start breaking out into a new uptrend on Ondo, I still like this, and as a long-term buy. So, guys, I feel like it's a broken record. Just another week, just another week. But when it happens quickly. So be ready on these things. OGN, ERI, TSI, RSI Pro, guys. OGN looking good for a buy at the dip on the weekly time frame, and potential 40x on these. We do want to be holding moon bags on them, but taking profits in these red zones. I will be. So I've got decent sized positions in all of these so that we can start to take profits on the way up. Stack's not really ready yet on the weekly time frame, although I did get an alert. It's seeing some buy pressure on this daily, so I'm gonna kind of maintain and hold that. So these are my holdings, guys. I'm happy to look at any that you want to look at. Looks like Sui's up nicely today. We'll jump over to that. So INJ, though, look at that holding, beautifully holding that support line. Nice buy time for INJ, right at this sort of $10 range. Still looks good. Okay, so make your notes. Nice little bounce there. And once we get TSI green and the rest of these starting to turn green, INJ I think looks ready. Daily looks good as well. Hey, this is Brett from Moonstream. If you'd like to learn more about our pro trading signals or our live classes every Wednesday or our Retire Rich program, go over to moonstream.io/start.